Hello, I'm Michael Cantrell, and you are listening to the Prison Officer Podcast, a place to have a conversation about the forgotten cops that work in this country's jails, prisons, and correctional centers. A place for me to try to make sense of a career spent working inside the fence with some of the greatest people that nobody sees or recognizes for the important job they do to keep this world safe. If you love this podcast, hit the follow button, or better yet, share with your family, friends, or coworkers. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Prison Officer Podcast. Today, I'm going to cover, some stories and information about Wisconsin's Department of Corrections. I have a former Sergeant, Kevin Phillips, who's joining us today. I'm going to interview him, and we're going to learn a little bit about some of the places that he worked and the beginning of his career and stuff. So, welcome, Kevin. How are you today?
Doing great. Thanks for having me.
Oh, absolutely. I'm excited to hear some of the stories you've got and hear about when you got into corrections. So, but I always like to start a little earlier than that. So if we can go back and tell me a little bit about how you grew up and, where you grew up and what that was like.
So I grew up in central Wisconsin, the Stevens Point area. Grew up relatively normal. I had a really normal childhood up until I was about sixth grade or so. That's my parents. They got a divorce. My dad, he decided to go off and do illegal activities. And I stayed with my mom.
Right.
And then I graduated in New London High School in 2008. And yeah.
So what did you do in high school? What was the main things that you liked? Was it sports or writing or what?
No, it was more or less building things. Like I was very avid in welding and machining and woodworking, stuff like that. The New London's a very small community, and there's not a lot to do unless you're capable of building stuff with your hands.
Right.
I guess.
Yeah.
So
where's New London? What's the next biggest city up there nearby?
Appleton would be the biggest city next to New London, which is about 15 minutes away.
Okay. Excellent. So you get out of high school, you're looking for work, or did you go in the military? What happened next?
No, I just went to the workforce. I was never involved in military. Just went to factory to work, and then eventually found my way to corrections.
So I'm always interested. We talk about this. I don't know a whole lot of fourth graders who stood up and said, I'm going to be a correctional officer when I grow up. So how did you end up in corrections? Did you know somebody? Was it an ad? What got you into that?
So the year prior to me joining corrections, I was actually doing online schooling to be a police officer. So I was doing criminal justice and stuff like that. And at the time I was working for a company called Advocare, which is a mobile hospice company that we deliver oxygen and beds and stuff to individuals who are on hospice. And I just happened to drive past one of those signs that are stuck in the grass. It said Wisconsin DOC now hiring. And I'm like, well, I want to go to be a police officer, so maybe this is a good stepping stone. So I threw a resume in, and a few weeks later I got a call.
You're right. I think a lot of us think that corrections is, and I'm not going to say it's not, but we look at it initially as, this is one of those public service jobs. I'm going to be like a firefighter or a policeman. And
right.
A lot of times it doesn't turn out that way. That's not the way we're looked at. Did you feel that once you got in?
So once, initially before I started training, I didn't know what to expect. You see on TV how prison really is and TV. And then when you go through the training, you start to learn that the TV shows are nothing what it's like in real life. Absolutely nothing.
Right.
And, the more and more I was in it, the more I realized that I wanted to stick with it. I didn't want to become a cop. I didn't want to go out on the streets. I wanted to do what I was already doing.
Right. Okay. Cool. So you get hired. And how long's the academy in Wisconsin?
So it's 7 weeks.
7-week
training. You're there Monday through Friday. You go home, and on the weekends, if you're further enough away, they put you up in a hotel during that week. You start out with death by PowerPoint, and then you do your POSC, which is your defensive training, and then you qualify with your firearm. You get pepper sprayed, and you get tear gassed, and then do your final test, and you're shipped off to whatever institution they tell you to go to.
Oh, wow. So you guys don't know what institution you're going to until after the academy?
Correct. So, like, my specific class, we were given 3 choices. We were given Fox Lake Correctional, Waupun Correctional, and Columbia Correctional.
Uh-huh.
And based off of where you live, you could choose between, you got your top choice and your second choice. And they would take, your mileage to where you live to where the institution is, and they would assign you based off of the shortest distance.
Okay.
So for me, I lived in Plover, so Portage from Plover is about an hour drive. So they naturally stuck me at CCI.
Okay. So one of the questions I like to ask too, about academies, because I went through 2 different academies. I went through the Missouri Department of Corrections Academy, and I went through the Federal Bureau of Prisons. And one of the things I think that we don't get a lot of in corrections is self-defense, any type of training, to be able to take care of ourselves in a fight and stuff like that. A lot of us came in, we'd already been in fights, but not everybody had. Most people haven't been attacked the way you get attacked in prison. And the Missouri Department of Corrections was really good. We spent a lot of time on the mats. We learned about arm bars. We learned how controlling techniques. And then when I went to the Federal Bureau of Prisons, I felt like the Federal Bureau of Prisons basically just taught me how to get away. We didn't really learn much about hands-on. We learned if they grab you, how you get away. And, if they're trying to stab you, they used to teach the crab walk, where you'd get down on all 4 and kick with your hands and feet to keep from getting stabbed in your torso. So I didn't ever feel that was real effective. With Wisconsin, you said, you guys were there 7 weeks. How was your defensive tactics? Was that something that felt good, that you learned something, or was it just a little bit here and there?
I don't think it was touched upon the way it needed to be touched upon.
Right.
It was only about 2 weeks long. So again, death by PowerPoint, we go through the entire use of force policy and everything like that. And then getting the hands-on was only a couple of sessions. So literally only a couple of days. So not very much. Yeah. And the standard for their defense is strike when you can and get away.
Yeah.
Always have, you always have your exit or you're out. And for me, I grew up nitty gritty in the woods. I'm going to resort to what I naturally can do within reason,
Sure.
If I can justify it on paper, I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
It's my life or theirs at the end of the day. And I'm going home.
Yeah. I definitely think that's something most agencies could improve on. And, you came in, what'd you say, 2016? Well, I came in 91. And, in 1991, there wasn't a whole lot of, MMA type stuff, and jujitsu's come a long ways since then. And of course, I'm not a practitioner, but I have watched it, and I have learned from some people. But a lot of the law enforcement agencies are going to getting on the ground and learning how to grapple. Yep. And corrections just won't take that step to teach our staff members how to protect ourselves better. That's just I guess I'm on my soapbox a little bit here, but.
Well, I'm in 100% agreement. They need to focus more on defensive training than policy procedure. I understand policy procedure is important, logistically, but defense is I think the most important thing you need to learn.
Yeah. And most of policy and procedure, you don't even really how to understand how to apply it just sitting there watching the PowerPoints. Until you get in there and put your hands on the job, that's when policy and procedure starts making sense.
Right. And a lot of younger new officers, they don't understand that your lieutenants and your captains and whatnot, they're gonna help you with your reports. They're gonna help you in any situation that you get yourself involved in as best as they can. I mean, clearly, if you do something that's against the law or use of force, like a use of power or something that is excessive, then you're on your own. But like if you stay within that use of force area, they're going to help you with their policy procedure.
Yeah,
and,
absolutely.
And they don't really touch on that in the academy at all. They're just like, this is how it is. This is what you do. Like the famous sign, the famous thing that a lot of veteran officers and staff would say was, you've got two books. We called it the Madison book, and then we call it the CCI book. Everything that you do in the Madison book, forget completely about it. You're doing everything via CCI book, and it's like day and night.
And the Madison book is like Wisconsin Department of Corrections?
Yeah. So like their black and white policy procedure, like how they expect everybody to handle every single situation.
Right. Yeah. You know, state to state and agency to agency, you see a lot of the same things repeated. But that's interesting to about your academy there. So 7 weeks of the academy, and they assigned you to, what did you say the name was?
Columbia Correctional Institution.
So tell me about that. What's that institution like? How many inmates and security level?
It's a maximum security, but within the maximum, we have a medium and minimum barracks.
Okay.
Mostly for transitional bed spaces. At other institution, they don't have it, so they ship them to us. Yeah. Or the vocational at CCI was pretty good, especially for like alcoholism and drug related charges. Mm-hmm. They had pretty good vocationals for that. But before I got like to the institution, I didn't know what to expect. You know, I came in barely wet behind the ears, so to speak, as a new recruit. And I don't know, I was definitely nervous, to say the least. Mm-hmm. But once I did the walkthrough and I could kind of see how things are laid out and how things are ordered, it wasn't really that bad. Like the nickname for CCI used to be the Wild West.
Right.
Throughout the inmates. Like if you got sent to CCI, you were bad.
Right.
Like the worst of the worst got sent to us.
Okay.
And I don't know, I just took it one day at a time.
Yeah. So walking in as a rookie, you said you were nervous. Do you remember the first time the grill shut behind you?
I do. I'll never forget that. The two-way vestibule walking through pass control, every single time that first door slammed, my heart always dropped. Because I was like, I don't know if I'm coming home tonight.
Yeah. Yeah. So you get there as a rookie. Where do they stick you at first?
So we do like a little meeting in the break room, and then we go from there. We go to a conference room, and then that's when they assign us our units or where we're going to work. So like a
roll call?
Yeah, just to see who showed up, pretty much.
Oh, that's great. When I worked for the state of Missouri, we used to do roll call, and then when I went feds, of course, the union decided that that they had to pay us to come in 10 minutes early and stand roll call. And that was the worst thing that ever happened, because that 10 minutes and getting to see everybody else on the shift and figure out what you're going to do and coordinate your stuff that night. I really do. I missed a lot of that. So that's good that you guys still had that.
Yeah. So, first day on the job, we'd go to our little conference room, and everybody that was in my academy class that graduated, we're all sitting there, and the warden came in and introduced himself, and then we were tasked with, well, where do you want to work? What do you want to do? We've got this spot, and I actually was told to go up into segregation 1 during that time to assist the officers up there on a situation, and I didn't even get to pick what I wanted to do. They just threw me somewhere. So when I came back, they're like, okay, well, you were just up in Seg 1. You're going to go back up there. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
So
you must have had that look about you.
Yeah. I mean, I've been told a long time in my life that I have the resting bitch face is what you call it. The RBF.
Okay. I've heard that.
don't piss them off. I used to be, I was that sergeant. Like, I was nice until it wasn't time to be nice, and then I was nice again.
Right.
And my inmates knew that eventually.
Yeah. So you get thrown right into segregation. Yep. What's that like?
Up there, it was wild. I tell you, it was my favorite place to work. The very first time I was ever up there, Had an inmate. We had him strapped down in the 5-point chair. He had a spit mask on, and my job was to go into the room with him and watch him and make sure he didn't, do anything. And he was sitting there. He was like motioning his head left and right, up and down. He was trying to get that spit mask over his mouth, under his chin, so he could try to spit at me. And
Sure.
6 hours into the job, I had to apply a pressure restraints underneath his chin because he had tried to spit at me.
Right.
So that was my very first incident. 6 hours in.
Are they still allowing those pressure restraints around the neck, or did they come off that?
When I was in there, we did it. If you follow the jaw line underneath the jaw, there's 2 points in the soft spot of the jaw where you can push up, and you just push up as hard as you can.
Sure.
And when I was there, they allowed it.
Yeah.
I don't know about now, but
Yeah, I know a lot of anything around the neck restraints, a lot of stuff the agencies are backing away from, even though they've protected us and are very effective and 99.9% safe,
Right.
But so segregations are, that's really getting dropped into the prison. You're not easing your way in. That's full-time 24/7 prison. So what are you doing in segregation? Where do they have you? Working a walk or?
So a lot of the times as a newer officer, I was assigned to observation status. So I was, the inmates that were on suicide watch, I'd be doing their checks every 5 minutes or 10 or 15 or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
I'd just walk to their cell, spend a couple seconds looking in, making sure they're okay. I go back and I'd write down what I saw.
Right.
And I did that almost every day for a few months to start.
Wow. That might have got tedious.
It was until the very first actual incident, like major incident that took place. An individual bit his arm, the left side of his arm on the inside part where that main vein runs through. He bit that all the way down to his artery and ripped his artery in half with his teeth.
Cool.
Yeah. It was wicked. I'm 2 months in, literally 2 months in, and I'm standing in front of this guy's cell. I'm like, holy geez, like he's holding his arm, he's squeezing his hand, he's making the blood spurt out. Yeah. And it's pooling up around the center of his bunk and like in like a circle, and it's gnarly. Never thought I'd see that.
So I've told people before, early on in my career, I had a guy cut both femorals at the same time. He put razor blades in toothbrushes and laid down in his bunk and just laid back, and that's how he killed himself. Couldn't have saved him if you were standing there. Right. But, I grew up on a farm. I had no idea how much blood the human body had in it. Did you have a thought like that standing there?
No, I had no idea. And miraculously, I don't know how, but he didn't pass out even. He didn't even pass out. This kid was he was probably only like 23 years old.
Wow.
And he did this.
Yeah. So where'd you go to next?
So after a few months of working up in SEG, I was able to sign for a position, and I signed for regular GP unit. Housing Unit 8 was my baby
maximum security.
Yes, yeah, maximum security. I had on average about 70 inmates. It's split four tiers, or A side, B side, and then you got upper and lower on each side. And then I was an officer there for a little while, and then I was promoted to sergeant, and I stayed on the unit as the Unit 8 sergeant, second shift.
Wow. So that was a few months. How many months in?
About 4.
About 4 months, and they promoted you to sergeant.
Yep.
So you went from the fire to the frying, or frying pan to the fire?
Yep.
Yeah. So how'd you like supervision? Were you ready for leadership?
Oh, absolutely. I'm what you consider a natural leader in some aspect. I loved every second of being a sergeant. That just being able to build the rapport with the individuals on your unit and making your unit your unit.
Right.
It's how you want it ran. Them 8 to 16 hours that you're there.
Yeah.
And I mean, as a sergeant there, it was great. I liked it a lot.
Sure. Well, we talk about leadership on here a lot. So, what's your number one? What do you think the most important thing for a correctional leader is, with your experience there?
Being able to mentor your staff members, to me, is the most important thing. You know, I was lucky when I promoted. My officer was one of the officers that I went to the academy with. So me and him, we knew each other, and we knew how to operate together. But there was times where I'd get officers that didn't have a clue what they were doing inside the institution. And to me, being able to guide them to safely conduct what we need to conduct every single day is the most important thing.
Right. Hands-on, most of it hands-on?
Oh, yeah. You know, if so it was just me and then officer on the unit, so one of us is always locked in to the control room. So if I'm watching the officer on the floor and I see him struggling with something, or there's, you know, he doesn't have an answer to whatever, I always told the inmates, come to me, you know, I'll try to guide you in the best way that I can. But otherwise, if I see that he's struggling with something, I'm going to call support immediately and have somebody come down and assist that officer. And then, like, at our little lunch hour that we get for 5 minutes before count, you know, I'd talk to him like, hey, this is what I saw. This is, like, I'm not saying, like, this is what you need to do, but, like, maybe next time, if we do it this way, it might be more efficient or smoother for you, type of thing. And
Right.
That actually, doing that led up to, like, towards the end of my career, being nominated for a leadership award in the state of Wisconsin in 2019.
Oh, wow. Excellent. So, you know, one of the things I hear, and you might have an answer for this, you might not, but a lot of what I hear right now is we don't have the time to train. We don't have the time to do that stuff. And literally, I talked to a guy in Iowa, and their new officers were getting a day and a half of training before they went into the jail. Do you have any ideas or thoughts on, you know, what you did to get around? Because you were working in a control bubble, yet your officers were on the outside. How did you get that training to them? Was there, did you give them stuff to think about, then question them about it later? Or, you know, what was some of the, did you have a trick, I guess?
So I guess, like, for me, the biggest way for me to conduct, like, information to them is to call them. You know, I would call them on the floor from the bubble and be like, hey, like, you know, it's 10 minutes to count. Let's get these guys going. You know, just kind of reminding him or her, like, the daily thing that we have to do every single day at the exact same time, and just trying to push that consistency to make sure that we're both on the same page. So I would call them constantly, not to harass or not to bombard, but, you know, just to divulge information.
Right.
And you know, I was always watching, always.
Right. Oh, absolutely. I know one of the things I used to do is I went up in rank. So I didn't get to see all my staff. Some of them be on days off. Some of them would, you know, move to different housing units and stuff. But I found email, and I think, you know, I would find a good article on something that was going on in corrections and send it out and have them tell me what they thought about it, you know, just to keep their mind working. Because I think we dropped the ball on that a lot, and keeping our staff engaged with where they work. And, you know, sometimes I'd put out articles about, you know, somebody had been hurt in another agency or whatever, and how it happened, and how we could prevent it where we worked. I might ask them that question. And so sometimes I think it's a cop-out that we say, well, we don't have time to, you know, be doing the training. Well, we may just have to change the way we do the training. You know, you adapt to what we've got.
So what our institution did for, like, the trainings aspect is, like, occasionally we would have, on third shift, we would have training night. And as a sergeant on third shift, my task was, if I wasn't, like, actually working in the training with the lieutenant or the captain, whoever's working that night, We'd go down, we'd relieve the officer, they'd go up to whatever, they'd do restraint training, they do bed training. So we found time.
Cool. Right.
And overtime, everybody knows about overtime inside the institutions. It was the best way for people to get overtime and still learn something when we did those training, because everybody knew weeks in advance that, all right, we got training night this night.
Yeah.
If you're not already working a double, you're working a double.
Yeah.
You need to do this. This is important. So that's how
Kudos
we did
to them.
it. That's how we did it. We did everything extra training on third shift.
No, that's wonderful. Kudos to the people that were doing that. That's great for the staff. So, where did you go after this? What was your next assignment?
Housing Unit 10, which is the minimum and medium barracks inside the institution. And we called that spot, even though it was on second shift, we called that spot the retirement spot. You needed at least 7 years or plus of time to be able to sign for that spot. But I got lucky, and nobody wanted to work that unit second shift. And I put my name on it. I think it was my second year.
Right.
It was my second year there. I put my name on it, and I got it, and that's where I was regular for my regular shift. I still did a lot of seg on third shift, and orders and scheduled overtime, but my other baby was Housing Unit 10.
So you said minimum and medium inside this maximum prison. Were they the ones doing the cleanup and stuff, or was it just a separate housing unit, or?
Yeah, it was a separate housing unit inside the institution. I mean, they commingled with the maximum guys all the time.
Really?
They'd go out and wreck together. Sometimes we had minimum guys working in the kitchen next to maximum guys. We had minimum guys doing, they'd do the shoveling, obviously, outside the fence. If they got approved, they'd be able to go outside and do things. But yeah, they mingled together, the minimums and the maximums.
So you've got minimum securities who are in contact with maximum securities, and the minimums might go outside the fence.
Yep.
Wow, that's crazy to me. That sounds like security problems left and right. No problems with that? No.
Oh no,
contraband problems? Oh, okay.
There was. We had mass, I think while I was still, I'm going to kind of back up a little bit, but while I was still an officer, we conducted an institution search, and the main focus was BSI, which is the business inside the institution that was it was like a printing company. They printed everything for people across the state, and we searched that entire, I want to call it a factory. It's almost like literally a factory, and we found close to 200 USB drives fully loaded of nudie pictures. We found DVD players. We found DVDs. We found pages of printed off pictures, and they use that for currency.
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely.
And inside BSI was minimums and maximums. I mean, there's a will, there's a way. And then, the typical contraband that's been thrown over the fence with a tennis ball, tins of chew. And when THC gummies started becoming more popular, they'd be involved in that too, or straight marijuana, vape pens, stuff like that would come through.
Yeah, I think a lot of and for the people who don't know, I think a lot of the public doesn't know, there is prostitution in prison where inmates are prostituted, sex for money, but there's also what we used to call paper pimps. And this was back before there was so much DVD and USBs, and there was Playboys. And these guys would tear out pictures and put them in these big photo albums that were, some of them photo albums were a foot thick. And then the guy would come over and pay him stamps to take that photo album to his bunk overnight. And so they were like paper pimping out all these dirty pictures. So now I guess they're doing that a lot more when they can with the USBs, or if they could get a hold of the DVDs and a place to play that and stuff. Interesting. So, yeah. What was your next step in there? You're now working over in the medium and minimum, and what are you seeing over there?
I mean, not a lot of stuff, the typical, like dealt with gambling. Gambling was huge with canteen. I personally never had any like major issues on the unit. I was I wouldn't want to say strict, but like I expected my inmates to follow through with rules, regulations, and most of them did, like I wasn't always up in their business. They did what they needed to do. I did what I needed to do.
Right.
But majority of the time they respected my position and I respected them as much as I could. And, we had that rapport.
As long as they earned it.
Yeah. I could go out, I could switch out with my officer at any time of the day, go out on the floor and walk around 40, 50 guys and not have to worry about much.
Right. So one of the things that I saw where you were at Columbia Correctional Institution, that's where Jeffery Dahmer was. That's where he was killed. Did you, what do you know about that? Do you know anything about that? That was way before your time, I guess, with 1994. But what do you know about Jeffery Dahmer and his murder there at the institution?
Well, I like to tell people my biggest accomplishment was being able to go to the restroom right where he was murdered, because honestly, not a lot of people can say that. Not a lot of people can say that.
No.
But no, I've had inmates that were on my unit that were there when that happened. They were there when, he was first brought in. They'd watch him. They'd literally shut down the whole prison, just for him to walk from his unit up into where the warden's office is and conduct interviews. And
right.
I've had one particular inmate tell me stories that I was telling way before anybody else from like Netflix or anything knew about on the actual reason why he was killed. And it wasn't because of his crime. I mean, it had a partial part to do it, but because how he acted inside the institution, he would go up to new staff and he would be about 3 or 4 feet away to newer staff. And he'd kind of lean in and be like, "Don't worry, I don't bite." He'd say things like that to new staff. And he would, now with this Jeffrey Dahmer thing on Netflix, everybody knows, but like, he literally did take his chicken nuggets and bite them into people shapes and dunk them in ketchup, and he would dangle them in front of the inmates' faces and torment them.
Oh.
Because he got like a sick joke out of it. Like it was a sick joke for him.
Right.
So the individual that actually took him out, that's, it pissed him off. He was disrespectful in that way, and they didn't take, they don't take kind of disrespect.
Yeah. Did they put him out in general population right away, or was that
no? He was
high or maximum security general pop.
So inside there, there's two different units that are specifically designed. So there's Unit 6 and 7. Unit 6 is like special management, so we call it SMU, so special management unit. And then we've got Unit 7, which is special management, but it's like a higher security. So like it's like the more dangerous special guys, to say the least. So I don't know exactly what unit he was on for sure, but I know he was not in general population until he asked to be put in general population.
Yeah. It's interesting that you say that about the way he taunted other inmates. When I worked at Missouri State Pen, I had an inmate in my housing unit, 5A and B, and his name was Robert Burdella. He was known as the Kansas City Butcher. He had a bunch of young boys that he lured to his house, and then he, raped them and tortured them and killed them, took pictures of them while they were being tortured, buried them in his backyard. So he was a serial killer up there in Kansas City. And when I was there, he was in the PC unit, but he was allowed to have his legal work. And in that legal work were Xerox copies of all of those Polaroid pictures that he took of his victims being tortured. And he would tell the inmates that he was, there's not a polite way to say it, but that he was masturbating to those pictures, and, and he'd tell these inmates stuff, this could be your family. and they wanted to get at him so bad they couldn't stand it. If he wouldn't have been in protective custody, I'm sure one of them would have got to him. But I was working the night he died. He died of a heart attack or whatever in his cell, and I remember it vividly because the night he died, you heard a couple of inmates, they start talking, and it starts getting noisy. People are figuring out what happened, and then you start hearing some clapping. And the clapping starts in 5A and B, and it grew. And it grew until I think the entire Missouri State Penitentiary, it was just a roar of clapping because the inmates were so happy he died. It was a really, ominous, weird thing to be standing there listening to. But I kind of understand what you're talking about with the way they hated him, because they hated Berdella too, and would have got to him if they could have.
Yeah, there's a few people that were there that when I was there that it was almost the same thing. Like, that Brendan Dassey, he was there when I was there. Right. I don't know if you know much about that guy, but he was he's part of the Making a Murderer series on Netflix with Stephen Avery. Yeah, I mean, he was there, and he was, when he first got there, he was taken advantage of. A lot of people would take him, like, use him for his money and stuff like that he got. And then there was some individuals that, they would brag about what they did, and same concept, they just wish they could get a hold of them. They never got to.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So, what were you where are you at in your career now? What's going on?
I'm running Unit 10. I'm working with the deputy warden, the warden, security director. We're coming up with some ideas on like the layout, like to make the unit run more efficiently, because a lot of the individuals that are in Unit 10 are there for programs, like whether it's AA or some other vocational thing that they're there for, and they're only there for maybe 6 months to a year, depending on, bed space on other institutions or however long the vocational thing is. And the way it was set up, it was like most of them were all scattered about between A side and B side. And I was trying to come up with an idea to make it more efficient. Like, everybody who's on AA is going to be A side, left side. All the groups are over there, so they can do their AA together, they can whatever, and then so on and so forth. And you got your vocational workers that are working outside the fence. They're going to be on B side in the back because, they're cleared to go outside the fence. Like, why focus on them as much as the people that need to be focused on? So, like, you got your troublemakers that are going to be in the middle to where I can see them at all times. And the warden and the deputy warden, the security director, they're all on board with it, and started getting these proposals ready for Madison to be able to switch these things up. And the unit manager, he didn't like it. He didn't like that idea at all.
So did you bring him in?
I mean, I filled him in on everything. Like, I'm not going to overstep his rank and his position. I tell him, like, hey, this is what I'm working on. His thing was more or less, it didn't come from him and his idea. He didn't go to the warden with these ideas. We call it blue shirt. A blue shirt went and had all these positive change ideas, and the warden was like, "Yeah, let's look at this. This makes a lot of sense. If what we can do to make you guys safer, make the inmates safer, and make everything run efficiently, why aren't we looking at it?
Sure.
So,
yeah, I think Teddy Roosevelt wasn't he the one that said that it was Truman. Said it's amazing what can be accomplished if we don't care who gets credit. Right. And sometimes, people get their feelings. So, okay, tell me what was going on or where you're at now. Tell me a little bit about that. What's going on?
Well, in between working with the warden, deputy warden, security director, I'm doing my overtime. I'm working 16-hour days, 4 or 5 days a week. I'm pushing out probably in 1 year. I pushed out almost 800 hours of overtime. So I'm all over the place. I'm working other GP units on third shift or first shift or whatever. Sometimes I occasionally got the tower, which is like the best of the best, especially as a sergeant, because that's an officer spot.
It's a break once in a while.
Yeah, it was nice. I mean, the first time I got up in a tower, I was all ecstatic, and then like 20 minutes into it, I'm like, wow, I'm fucking bored.
Don't ever put me up here
Can't
again.
do nothing up here.
Absolutely.
I can't have my phone. I got a book, but that book sucks, and like I can't leave. It's.
I never understood the guys that go up there
yeah.
and spend years sitting in a tower.
No.
I couldn't take it.
No, thank you. Occasionally, it was nice to be able to get away from the shit, but
yeah.
But yeah, no, it was not for me. I'm more of the hands-on. Like I wanna work in the crap. I wanna roll through the mud essentially, and that's how I work a lot of my overtime. Up at DS1, we called it DS1 Disciplinary Separation Status 1 to be politically correct.
So how are you dealing with? 800 hours. Are you married at this time? You have children?
At that time, I was married. Yes, I had a daughter that was at that time 5 or 4, 4.
Right.
And then I had a newborn, so I didn't really get to spend a lot of time with them growing up. With my first one, especially my first one, I missed a lot. I'm working 2 p.m. to 10 p.m. and then I at 8 o'clock at night. That's when they would do the harder or the overtime, and I never knew if I didn't already sign up for overtime. I never knew if I was going home at 10 o'clock.
Sure.
So it was stressful on that aspect. My kid, where's dad? Dad's never home. Dad's always working. Dad comes home and he sleeps all day on his day off, and he's irritable and this and that. It takes a toll. Even if you don't work overtime, that the career takes a toll on people mentally, and it's kind of like the biggest talking point that I want to discuss is the mentality of corrections and what kind of mental state you need to be in at all times. So like I was recently diagnosed with PTSD, literally like not even a month ago. I was diagnosed with PTSD due to everything that happened at the institution, whether it was an incident or just everyday life of the institution. And
I think they're calling it cumulative PTSD.
Yeah. So it's
not one incident sometimes. It's just the daily repetition of what you go through.
Yep. And like the whole, like people, they hear people say like, well, I can't walk. Like, I don't like it when people walk behind me, or I have to sit facing a doorway. Like, that's real. Like, like people really have to do that. Like, they can't stop. And like for me, my biggest thing is if I'm out in public, I'm looking at people's hands.
Sure.
Constantly. I could be at a Walmart going to get groceries, and I'm left and right, up and down. Hands are hands are hands. Yeah. Because that's what I was trained to do. That's ingrained into my brain.
Yeah. And that comes from working in a penitentiary. Absolutely, it does.
And, it takes a toll. It definitely takes a toll, especially for people who don't really truly understand what it's like. They just, they think we're weird. I don't know.
Yeah. So if you could have backed up, what would you suggest others do, or what would you have done different?
I mean, live your life. Don't make your life 100% about corrections. It's as hard as it is. Leave it at work. Don't bring it home. I brought it home, and it's not good. Yeah, it's fun to tell stories to your friends and family and stuff, but at the end of the day, those stories are going to be ingrained in your brain for the rest of your life, and you're never going to stop. You're never going to forget them. And the more you share with people who don't truly understand, the worse it's going to be, in my opinion.
The more you share with people that don't understand. Explain.
So, like, case in point, first night as a sergeant, third shift, I work in DS2, so it's second step below seg. And within 15 minutes, my fire alarm's going off. And I don't even have my equipment on yet. My officer does. I close a bubble. He goes up onto the tier. We turn the lights on, and you can't see 2 feet in front of you because it's all smoke.
Right.
He peers into the cell. The inmate lit himself on fire. Literally lit himself on fire 10 minutes into my shift.
Yeah.
And when I tell that story to people who can't comprehend what it's like, they're like, "Oh man, that must have been cool." You know, kind of like that bro type of attitude, like
Sure.
that teenagers have, like. But like, if you're not there, if you've never seen or dealt with that, you don't truly understand what it's like. And for me to tell that story, it's not as like I'm talking with you. You've seen it. You've dealt with it.
Right.
You understand the feelings. You understand the smells. You understand the noises. All of that. When I'm talking to the general public or people that don't, they hear it and then they forget about it. So it doesn't go anywhere.
Well, yeah. And, I've got friends who've been in combat, and, they almost say the same thing about, you hear these people who've played Call of Duty, and they're like, "Oh yeah, man, that's cool." Well, it's not cool when it's a real person, that you're putting your scope on or your sights. It's not cool when it's a real person, that you have to go pick up and put in a body bag afterwards. You don't just hit reset and, go back to playing. And I think that's kind of what you're talking about, is that people don't have the human face on inmates, and like him and not, and how they got there and how society made the rules that put them there. They're still humans. They're human beings, and to smell the flesh off one when they burn, or to see the blood that comes out of the human body when they cut themselves, it is traumatic. It is something that doesn't go away. So, did you end up getting divorced? Do you attribute that to you not being able to handle work and home at the same time?
Yeah, I did get a divorce, and I mean, I don't personally think that corrections really had a lot to do. It might have. I don't know for sure, but.
We have a lot of divorce in corrections.
Yes.
I'm one of the weird ones. I've been married to the same lady for 32 years. I've been married once. I knew guys that worked next to me who'd been married 7 times, 5 times, several 3 and 4 times. So divorce it's a big thing that we deal with in corrections.
Sure is. Like I said, I don't attribute 100% to that being what happened with me personally, but yes, it is huge. It's a big thing.
So did you have something outside of work that you had to look forward to? Because that's kind of what I tell people. You've got to have, whether it's family time or whether it's hobbies or whether it's, you've got to have a focus so that you have something to think about when you're walking those tiers and you've done 16 hours and you don't remember what day it is. You have to have something to focus on, and it can't just be, and you sound like you may have been where I was a few times in my career with 800 hours of overtime, but money isn't enough. You can't just go to work and count the money and make that replace what you're not getting from a hobby or interaction or something from the outside. For me, it was, I got into some heavy athletics, some Scottish strongman events and stuff like that, and that gave me a focus for the weekends. My family camped a lot, so we did that. But did you have something like that you were focused on, or did it just get to where you were just focused at work?
So I would always focus on getting home to my kids. That was the most important thing, being able to get home to my kids. And what helped me push through it was knowing that the people that I'm essentially guarding or in charge of, I'm protecting my kids from them. Mm-hmm. And that's what helped push me through, was knowing that I'm doing a service that's directly affecting my family's life. Yeah. So that's what helped me a lot.
Do you think they understand that? Because talking to mine years later, my daughter's become a PhD in communication, and she's discussed PTSD and corrections and growing up with a correctional officer. She didn't understand that. as much as I felt it and as much as I was protecting her, she felt like I just had my thumb on her. Have you talked to your kids since then? And is there any, have they said anything like that?
Not really. I mean, my kids are still really young. My daughter's only 7, so I mean, she knows I work at a prison. She knows, she actually was inside the institution. We did like a tour, and we locked everything down, and I brought them, my 2 daughters and my mom. Wow. We brought them up into into the first part of DS1, not through the vestibule, but they could see like the common area of the unit, and they could see everything like that. So they knew where I worked, and they knew kind of what I did, but with them being so young, it's hard to really explain. So I guess I haven't gotten to that point with them yet.
So what do you think? Because I have some mixed feelings about that. I know there are some places out there that give family tours. I don't think I would have allowed my family to come in the prisons I worked in. I am torn with that on whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. Tell me what you saw there. Did you feel like that was a good thing for them to see that?
I personally, the way that CCI did it was pretty good. Like, everything was locked down. There was no inmates out and about. We didn't let them go. Like, we didn't do the tours inside of any units. They were never in any way, shape, or form in contact near an inmate. I personally think it was a good thing, so that, like, again, the everyday person can kind of understand what we do. It's not just, we just don't just stand there with a key ring twirling around our finger going, get back in your cell. It's not like that. Yeah. And to be able to bring your family to your workplace and kind of show them, it gives a better perspective. So I think I liked it. I mean, we went into the visiting room, and we had like little stations set up where everybody can go through the stations, and they can see like actual contraband that we found, actual weaponry that we've confiscated and stuff like that. And they're like, wow, like, you deal with this. Yeah.
Well, see, I'm all for civilians. I would love to see more civilians. Matter of fact, I think every judge should be required to tour prisons in their area. I think everybody that's ever on a jury should spend time walking through a local prison or a jail. I think everybody that has anything to do with the funding of our jails and our prisons should have to walk through them and understand. And our legal system, the attorneys and those people need to come walk through our prisons, because there's such a disconnect between what they think occurs and what truly occurs, that I'd like to have them in there to see some of that. Because as much as people, and this is my own opinion, but as a correctional officer, I didn't put anybody in prison. I've monitored thousands of inmates in my career. Not one of them did I ever put in prison. Society is the one that made the laws, voted the people in that made the laws, that built the prisons for our population. And you hear these numbers about the number of, inmates that we have in prison in the United States, and, we lead the world in the. That's not me. That's not you. That's not the cops. That's the public who has voted that in, who have voted the congressmen and the representatives in, who've passed those laws and built those prisons. The only thing I did was earn a paycheck and keep my community safe. And so I would love to see more civilians go in there, but I guess my family, I didn't, any more than I want them seeing nasty stuff on TV. I don't think I want their brain filled with the nastiness of what I saw every day. And I'm like you, I worked at some penitentiaries. So, I mean, it wasn't nice stuff going on.
I agree with you that like 100%, like, but I'm more or less like showing what I did. My kids, they're young. Oh, Dad, you're going to prison. They don't have any idea what the hell I did. So, I mean, it was a good way for me to safely show them what I did. And, I think it's a good thing. to an extent.
So just a curiosity that I ran across the other day, and if you'll go to the www.theprisonofficer.com, if you go down about halfway on the page, I've got links to different correctional books that are on Amazon and stuff. But one of them that I found, and a lady, her name is Donna, Miele, and I don't know how to pronounce that, so I'm sorry, Donna, but she's written some books. My aunt is a correctional officer. My father is a correctional officer. My mommy is a correctional officer. And she's written some children books. And it kind of reminded me when you said that your kids have no idea what you do. And that's kind of what those books are, where she's written them to give, these kids that have questions an idea of what their parent does or what their aunt does in prison. So if you're interested in that, you can look it up on www.theprisonofficer.com. But that's cool to hear. And I'm glad that you guys got to do that. I know that there were a lot of staff where I worked who enjoyed taking their family through there. I was the one that was conflicted about it.
Well, I mean, rightfully so. I mean, of course, you want to protect your children from everything you possibly can as a father. But at the same aspect, like I said before, it's great to be able to kind of give them some insight on what you do.
Sure. So, where did your career go now? I know you were alluding to a story.
So, 2019 was at the start of the year was a big year for me in corrections. I had just settled out of court on a lawsuit. I don't know if you remember going back to the beginning of this podcast. I told the story about the inmate who bit himself in the arm.
Right.
Well, years later, I get notification that I'm being sued for that incident as a rookie officer who has no idea what the hell he's doing.
Scared you to death.
Absolutely. And I went through the entire process, meeting with legal attorneys, and I went through what do they call it? I can't think of the word where you go and you meet with the inmate's lawyer.
It's not brief.
They question you.
Deposition?
Yes, a deposition. So I went through the deposition. First time ever going through a deposition in my entire life. I had no idea what to expect. This lady's grilling me with all these questions, and I'm just like, I don't know. I didn't say I don't know, but like, I can't recall. Most of my answers I can't recall. Look at my report, whatever. And we just finally, settled out of that, and I get an email from the deputy warden saying that I was cordially invited to the 2019 Wisconsin Department of Corrections
award ceremony or something.
Not an award. Well, it was partially an award ceremony. It was more or less like a conference.
Okay.
So like all of the people in the state of Wisconsin got together at one central location for a conference inside of a hotel room, a conference room. Mm. So it was a pretty big deal. And most of the people that were attending, if you weren't getting an award, you were either a lieutenant or higher. Mm-hmm. So this year they started letting the blue shirts, which would sergeants and officers, attend. And so I got to attend this. And a few weeks after that, I get, I'm actually on my way home from work one day, and there was a bit of roads construction going on, and there was a car accident that happened right in front of me. And what happened was a guy on a motorcycle was coming in towards me on one lane, and the car in front of me cut him off and clipped him, and he fell off and he slid like 40 feet on his face. Luckily, he's wearing a helmet, but he did that all right in front of me. And so, naturally, what I do, I throw my hazards on, I get out, I render first aid. I don't even think. I just jump into action, do what I'm supposed to do. And the guy behind me, he actually happened to be a first responder. So, we're working together. We're calling 911. We're securing the scene. We're doing all of the stuff that we would normally do inside the institution on the street.
Lucky for this guy.
Right.
Yeah.
And like, I do my report with the police afterwards, just like I would inside, I, Sergeant Phillips, was blah, 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 blah. And like a week later, I get a call to come to the security director's office. I'm like, what's going on? He's like, I need you to go down to the Portage Police Department and obtain your copy of the police report that you just wrote the other day. And I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, well, weren't you involved in a car accident situation? I'm like, well, yeah. He's like, well, go get that report. So I go and I get the report. Here, my security director takes that report, shows it to Madison. They submit for me to get the Heroic Valor Award in 2019.
Wow.
So
excellent.
Here I'm given Heroic Valor Award in 2019. I'm invited to go to a conference center with the higher ups of the Department of Corrections throughout the entire state. Not only that, I get recommended for Leadership Award for 2019 in the state of Wisconsin. So, wow. That year for me was going great. You're
on a roll.
Everything was going great. Everything was going great until the day that it didn't.
Yeah.
So I had an individual. She was a rookie officer transferred from Indiana. I was training her. I was doing what I was supposed to do. Telling her this is how we do things. This is what we need to do. This is the time that we need to do it. Well, one day she decided that she wanted to go out on the unit floor and try to tell an inmate to get down on the floor just because she could.
Huh.
Abuse of power. She wanted to show her power abusively.
Sure.
And me being the sergeant of the unit, that falls on me, apparently.
Yeah.
I had no idea what was going on. I didn't know she was doing this. My other officer was in the bubble with me. We were getting ready to pass out medications on his side, so he was coming in to get the med cart key, and we were just gossiping. We were talking, we were laughing about some joke or something. I don't remember exactly what we were talking about, but just so it just so happens that when she did that, the inmates on the other side looked in the bubble and they saw us laughing, so they assumed we were laughing about that situation. I had no idea that was going on.
Sure.
And after that, I get a call saying that we get an under investigation letter. So like I get a letter stating that I'm under investigation, and I'm like, I have no idea why, and nobody's telling me anything. I finally go to my investigation meeting, and then that's when they throw it out there like, this is what happened. This is why you're under investigation. I'm like, whoa. I was like, I have nothing to do with this, like, at all. And, I give my statements. My other officer gives his statements. The inmates give their statements. And then the other officer who actually did the deed gave her statement. And long story short, they took mine and my other officer's statement and completely discredited everything, said that we were both lying. We had complete, total knowledge of what was going on based off of the inmate statements and her statement. So I go from getting a Heroic Valor Award, Leadership Award, going to a conference, to being under investigation for something I had no control over at that time, no knowledge of, and there's no way for me to prove it.
Right.
It's literally my word against their word. And earlier in the show, when I mentioned that I was trying to work on good things for that unit, and that unit manager didn't like it because it didn't come from him, my personal opinion is that he saw that happen. He knew that happened, and he goes, I'm going to nail this asshole to the fucking wall right now. This is my chance.
Right.
So after, I plead my case, they come back with, okay, well, we're going to put you on admin leave with pay. So I get put on admin leave with pay for.
What's the charge here? What are they charging you with?
Essentially what they're charging me with, it's been so long since I looked at the documents, but
are they trying to say inattention to duty or something?
Something similar like that. I apologize if you can hear my dogs upstairs. Somebody just came home. But essentially that, like I failed to do my duty, or excessive power, or something like that. Like I broke some kind of policy or conduct or whatever. And I couldn't fight it. Like I tried everything I could. They discredited me. They discredited my other officer. I've got documents that I was, I was going to appeal it. I was told by that unit manager that they have me on video, which you can apparently see inside the bubble, pointing out the bubble and laughing. But here's the kicker.
Right.
I worked in control on third shift. I know how to watch tapes. I watched that tape. There is no tape that is in existence at that time of me pointing out that bubble and pointing and laughing at that situation. Not one. So,
wow.
During my appeal process, I called HR and I said, hey, I want to come in and I want to watch the tape with you, and I want to watch the tape with the security director and the warden or the deputy warden, anybody. I don't care. I want to come in and I want to watch this tape. I have the right to watch this tape.
Yeah.
Well, I've got 30 days to do this appeal. Day 5, I call them again. Oh, we haven't gotten anything from the deputy warden yet on if you can come in and watch the tape. Day 15, still haven't gotten any word. Day 29, still haven't gotten any word. They never once came back and contacted me saying, yes, you can come in this date and this time to review the footage, because they knew that footage did not exist.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. So what happens?
So what happens is that was it. Like I pretty much, I had no choice but to tuck my tail and leave. And, they let you go, or? Yeah, they relieved me of duty because of that. And there was no way for me to appeal it anymore because it went past 30 days. And I tried hiring a lawyer. I was going to hire a lawyer to fight it further, but the lawyer advised, he's like, you're going up against the state of Wisconsin. They once they make that decision, it is going to be damn near impossible to reverse that decision.
Yeah, I'm going to argue with him on that. There's been people who've now, granted, it's an uphill battle, but there have been people that have won that. I can't believe they didn't. So at no point did they say, well, this is a training issue, or this is, I can see, okay, we'll give you a day or two on the streets, but they went straight from there to termination, huh?
Straight to termination. No in-betweens, no nothing. Like, okay, well, you're going to take 30 hours of training.
Yeah.
To be able to observe your staff more efficiently, or something like that. Not a single thing like that. It was straight from you're being on admin leave to you're fired.
Yeah, I don't know. It sounds personal. It does for it to go that way, because otherwise there's no reason they couldn't have taken care of that administratively.
And then like a year later or so, like I was like, you know what, I'm gonna try to go to a different institution. So I applied for like Red Granite Correctional Institution, which is a medium, and with my credentials, my experience, we're always told if you promote within CCI, you could practically go anywhere in the state of Wisconsin and work because of that experience that you have. So I'm like, okay, well, I interviewed for a sergeant position at Red Granite. The interview went really well. They were really ecstatic, getting ready to offer me a job. And then 1 second, nope, we don't want you. And I asked why. And I'm like, they wouldn't tell me why. Yeah. And so I tried county jobs. I tried going to get a job at, Portage County Jail or Wapaka County Jail, just small little jails. Yeah. And, again, with my credentials, my training, my experience, nope, we don't want you. So I'm pretty certain that my name is now blacklisted or tarnished within corrections in this state. I don't know how else to think it.
Within Wisconsin, yeah.
Right, yeah. But I'm not about to move to Arkansas or something. No offense to them, but
well, I don't know. There's some places out there putting up some money. They're needing correctional officers. So I think it was DeSantis just gave them a 60% raise. Nebraska just got a 30% raise. So corrections is, if you're willing to move around, there's money to be made out there.
There is.
But that's too bad. That's sad to hear.
But I think at the end of the day, everything happens for a reason. Yes. Yeah. I loved the job. I loved every second of it, every aspect of it. I hated it too. Right. But at the same time, I was told to, that happened to me for a reason. And I think the reason would be if I were still in, I'd probably be a complete total mess.
Well,
I probably would. I mean,
yeah. It affects everybody different, I put 30 years inside.
Yeah, I mean, 5 years for you might not seem like a lot, but 5 years to me, a lot can happen in 5 years.
Right.
A lot.
And apparently, yeah. And now you're dealing with the PTSD.
Yep.
So,
yep.
So if you had to, if you got that, you seem positive about corrections and that you learned a lot and that, that it was a good career for you while you were there. What would you say, to rookies that are looking at coming in? What kind of advice would you give them on the way in the door?
The biggest bit of advice that I will say to any rookie or anybody that's interested in getting into corrections, if you truly have the mentality and the personality for the job, the biggest thing is shut your mouth and listen. I'm sorry, but
no, that's it.
Shut your mouth and listen. Especially when you're working with veterans that have 20, 30 years, any bit of the knowledge that you can gain from them, take it and hold on to it as long as you can, because they're not the future of corrections. The younger generation, the 20, 30-year-olds that are just getting in, they're the future of corrections.
Absolutely.
And if they can't withstand or withhold the information that a veteran is going to give them, they're already doomed before they start.
Yeah. And that's one of the reasons I started this podcast, was to collect some of that, because you're right. It is fleeting. Sometimes you meet those senior officers, they've got 2, 3, 4 years left and they've worked for 25 or 30. And, that's not just talk. They're giving you huge pieces of advice when they take time to talk to you. So, no, I think that's great. My grandmother used to tell me, God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth, and that was to do twice as much listening as you did talking. So, yeah.
Oh, another bit of information. Forget the words I know. Forget the words I know.
Don't you hate that?
Oh, yeah. Oh, I know. Oh, then do it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Kevin, I appreciate you coming on here and telling us your story and the good and the bad and the ugly. There's a little bit of all of it, I think, in that story, but it sounds like you're doing well now. You've found another job, and I'm glad to hear it, and I'm really happy that you came on here.
I appreciate you letting me come on and tell my side of things and a little bit of what the state of Wisconsin has to offer for Department of Corrections.
Absolutely. You have a good night, Kevin.
You as well. Thank you.
If you enjoy these podcasts, the best way to support the Prisoner Officer Podcast is to share these episodes with your friends or family on social media. Let me invite you to visit www.theprisonofficer.com. If you haven't already, check out the Prison Officer Podcast on Facebook and click that little follow button, or leave us a message, or better yet, leave us a review. And if you're listening to us on Apple Podcast, Google, or Spotify, please click the subscribe button. Till next time, I'm Mike Cantrell. Watch your back, and please take care of each other out there behind those walls.